Hey there, my name's Sam. Hey Crumbs, how you doing? I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, my name's Sam. I'm TiddyBeanToys on Instagram, and I am from Melbourne in the land down under of Australia.
So technically you're actually in the future, right? That's kind of like a running thing, because technically right now it's Friday for me, but it
is 2:20 on Saturday afternoon. So this has probably been beyond making toys and shit, learning that. Still the hardest thing is working out time zones and remembering where I am in the time spectrum, whatever it is. But yeah, I'm in the future, and shit's different in the future, man. Like the toys in the future are fucking crazy.
Well, I would say your workshop is clear proof of that. Absolutely. We always kind of tease about the fact that you're like, oh, we're in the future there, but it is kind of surreal to some degree. I know it's kind of stupid. There's people that are like, Crumbs, man, it's just science and geography, but it is actually kind of really wild trying to coordinate when you talk about your drops sometimes. And it's like, I'm waking up Saturday morning, 6 a.m. I'm checking my emails, and you're like, still up, toys. And you start kind of doing the math in your head where you're like, well, to organize drops the way you do, like your determination on that, man, is actually wild. The amount of times that we'll be shooting the shit, or we'll be talking with some other artists, and you're on your phone that whole while because you're actually lining up all the descriptions for your items, all the stories that you're building for them, and you're making sure that everything drops at the time it's supposed to drop.
Yeah, I'm good to go. Like when I've definitely got a lot better at, I guess, coordinating drops. Not only the time thing I'm not too stressed about, because I guess I'm lucky that I just need to load my stuff into a store. I don't need to sort of sit there and do claim drops. And I've done claim drops in the past and they weren't as successful, but definitely when I drop, there's a good, 3 or 4 hours where I'm ready to sort of see, for one thing, do people think it's cool? And two, just to kind of answer people's sort of questions, because they are a bit, I don't know. I don't feel like capture them greatly maybe in the photos that I take sometimes, or the descriptions, because I'm just too used to them kind of. But yeah, I've actually, like, after maybe 6 months of having an Etsy account, I've actually worked out how to do this stuff faster. Like, like load everything up like the night before, then you can get up and just go activate. So that took me 5 or 6 months just to be like, holy shit, you can do this. But I think that's also as much of a part of the process of, like, making molds and doing casts, is learning how to fucking run a shop, which is, I've worked in retail, but I did not own the shop. So, I love it. I get such a rush from, like, doing that stuff, and like being able to hit activate and put stuff out there when especially with those ones that have been just sitting there, or, I'm kind of building up over a slow period of time. It's so good just to kind of be like, hey, they're here. Like this is it. This is
your store, the way you run your store, the way you do your quote unquote like restocking or drops, is actually something that I've pointed out to other artists when they've debated doing a store. I've sort of said, like, look at how Tiddy Bean does this, man. Or somebody said to me, like, dang, I'm trying to plan a drop, I don't know how to do it. I'll be like, dude, watch Tiddy Bean's page, because at the end of the day, you do a very classic toy thing, and I don't know if it's inadvertent or not, but you do tease the release a bit. You do give us a little bit of some pictures on your Instagram, kind of letting us know, like, hey, don't worry, guys. The store's gonna get restocked. I see that you've seen what's there, but I'm about to refill it. And then you do this drop in a way where, instead of it being, hey, fight amongst yourselves for the 5 that I've got or anything, you really do drop 5, but they go to your store. And I've actually come to notice that there are people that, like, they are your loyal fans. Like, there's those dudes who will pick up tickets and be at every single Metallica concert. And there's people who will wake up and they will purchase every single Tiddy Bean drop, it seems. Like, maybe I'm crazy, maybe you just have a huge fan base. But it's crazy to me that I'll often, like, you go to your Etsy store any given day and you'll see that stuff has, one of it in 3 people's carts. And if you sleep on it, like, it's gone. The other interesting thing I heard you mention was actually learning it all. If you scroll to your Instagram page itself, I believe, was actually July 11th, 2020. So
you've done your research.
No, well, it's just interesting to me that, like, the amount you've done in such a short span of time, and not even just, like you said, not even just in the figures, like the fact that, in my opinion, your Etsy store is like a well-oiled machine, it appears. And you can't really talk to anybody without them knowing about Tiddy Bean. Like, you have these very, very loyal fans where, like, they love Tiddy Bean. So it's cool, man. You've accomplished a lot in a short period of time.
Yeah, thanks, man. No, I really appreciate that. That's really kind. And yeah, like, so one of the figures, and was like, wow, that's really cool. That I guess, that's exactly sort of word of mouth, but it's just something cool about, a customer buying a ton of their friend, and the friend buys it. And 90% of the stuff that goes, it all goes to the US. So yeah, but it's really cool to sort of do a drop and have people message and just go, that's fucking cool, man. Like in terms of sort of being able to accomplish, I guess, a lot in a short period of time. There's probably a few factors. One, I don't think I could stop doing this if I tried. Like, I have down days, and the reason I have down days is because I just crash. Because I would have done sort of like 10 days straight, and it usually happens on a Saturday. I'll kind of be like, man, I just need to take some time out and watch some movies. But another big reason of why I've been able to accomplish a lot in a short period is I've got a really very much supportive partner who is extremely tolerant of my absence in the home. So I have to thank her very, very much for being really cool and really, really supportive, not just kind of like letting me do my thing, but really, taking interest in it and critiquing and giving feedback. And she's not interested in toys whatsoever, and I made her a little bootleg Dengar thing. It's on my page. It'd be way down. It might have been September, October last year. And it's such a great little fidget thing to sort of do when you're just kind of like, and she carries around in a handbag. So it's so cool when we'll be out and she'll tell people sort of about TiddyBeanToys, and she'll be like, oh, here's one that he's made. And she'll like, it's like a little, like a showpiece. And it's like, that's fucking cool. Like, you don't have to do that. You can just be like, yeah, he makes toys. But she's like, he makes toys and they're fucking cool, and pulls them apart. It's got these magnets. And I have to thank her a lot for allowing me to kind of, just do this for many, many hours of the day. But it's like I said, I couldn't, once it started, there was no sort of stopping. And I've definitely get into phases of having, fixations or obsessions on certain parts. So it usually would be with a particular type of figurine or collectible. I'm like, I might not want to get the whole set, but I want to get at least 4 fucking good ones. So it was really nice to see that kind of fixation obsession actually go into and combine with like a creative kind of thing, which the creative part is something that I haven't done for a long time. So it was really cool to have this kind of wave of creativity and I don't know, just stuff like thinking of something else than just the day-to-day bullshit. I don't know.
A little bit of an escape. You did bring it up there too, because I did also want to try and get there, and it was like a perfect segue that you kind of brought us into. You've been doing this for a long time to a degree, but it's been a long time since you had a chance to be this creative. And that's something that actually totally blew my mind the other night. We were kind of chatting, and you started talking about your art background, because admittedly, we all know about COVID and suddenly toys, but it did really catch me off guard, unfortunately, because it's not something that comes up very often, that you actually have quite the extensive art background prior to even doing like a mold for something like an action figure style.
Yep.
What is that about?
So I guess I was probably around sort of 16, 17, and in Melbourne, I guess stencil art, street art, I should say, was really becoming a big thing. So we're talking 2002, 2003, which is like nearly 20 years ago. Holy shit. Fuck. So I just I really got into that sort of the graffiti and the stencil art stuff, and then it came to finishing high school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but by that point I was sort of making my own sort of stencils, really generic shit like fucking Jimmy Morrison and Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, like really kind of shit that you'd sort of do when you were like a 16-year-old stencil dude. So I went to did a diploma of visual art and visual art multimedia after high school, and that was really cool because, for one, I sort of grew up in a smallish town, like a suburb, I guess. It's probably about 40-minute drive from like the Melbourne CBD, and where the TAFE, so the college, was in Prahran. So Prahran was this really trendy part of Melbourne, sort of on the south side. It's really cool, and looking back and only explaining it now, it's like, it's nuts, because in this place there was, like in Prahran on Chapel Street, you've got these really, really cool collectible stores, like, it's got all like the cool McFarlane stuff, like I can't even remember, but just like really mint like collectibles and toy store. And then I think there was like 2 or 3 of them on this maybe 2-kilometer strip, and just like on like lunch breaks and shit, I'd just like go down and look at stuff. I couldn't afford anything because I didn't know if I had a job, or if I did, I didn't have any money. And I think, even then, like toys was such a huge influence on what I wanted to do, toys, video games, and that sort of thing. But yeah, starting TAFE, I like to paint, but I wasn't super confident. I could never do photorealism. I could never do portrait, landscapes, none of that kind of shit. Not that it's shit. I admire people, and I've got a really good friend that can do insane portraits. I've actually got one here.
So much art.
And I've got to give this friend a massive shout out as well. This is Luke. He's a lifelong friend, and he does some really cool fine art stuff. So this is Pancake, my sausage dog, and yeah, he does sort of some wild work. And he actually designed the TiddyBeanToys logo. So he's my if he's like the executive marketing consultant or some sort of fucking role in the company. So yeah, and then it was just about finding like what I actually want to draw, and again, lots of graffiti in Paran where the TAFE was. So it was just about like sort of, I don't know, not really doing that much graffiti, but just having a massive appreciation and trying to channel what I sort of saw, but not doing it because I didn't feel like I could do it. There was something kind of missing, and it was confidence. Like I just didn't have the confidence to sort of do it, and it was that imposter syndrome and just being like a 18-year-old dude. And then after probably a good 12 months, I started to sort of find what I really like, because the best thing about this course was you do painting, photography, sculpture, and the sculpture included making latex molds, and then eventually silicon molds. And yeah, so you really got to kind of like dabble in things, and you had heaps of freedom. Like you had basically just whatever you wanted. You needed the resources, they would order it in. So yeah, it was really cool. And eventually just sort of started to develop I really don't want to call it a style, but there's a kind of an okay example. So I just showed you all my ass.
That's what we came here for, secretly.
Something kind of tribal-ish / totem / obsessed with symmetry, like everything needs to be balanced, and also cool that you can kind of, doesn't really go a particular way. And it's kind of like, I really like looking at shit, like looking at clouds, and you start to see like images and stuff in it, and there's a word for it. There's a subreddit, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like when you look at a rock and you're like, hey, there's a face in there. I love people looking at this shit and kind of being like, oh wow, there's something else in there. This is like, that was probably one of the most recent things I did, and that was like probably 6 or 7 years ago. So
it's tricky though. Like you can clearly, in my opinion, all this comes back to the idea of understanding when you look at a form and you understand like the colors that work well with it and all that. Like,
yep.
It all comes right back to that kind of stuff where it's like you've got experience with it and you've found even what you enjoy.
Yeah, it was and it was weird, and I loved doing it. I loved sort of sitting down. I used to live with my parents, so I'd sort of sit downstairs, and it was kind of like a studio rumpus room kind of thing, and yeah, we'd just sit there and just paint for hours.
Sorry, I've never heard of rumpus room before.
As it came out, I'm like, yeah, I don't think this could be like just an Australian kind of saying. Fuck, what's a rumpus room? Like, is like a den? Is that also a Canadian kind of thing, or is that just an American thing?
We have like a den, or den.
My mum, I guess, is sort of creative in her own way, so she was always really supportive. I don't think she really knew what she was looking at a lot of the time, but she was kind of like, that's cool. Having a space like that, just to be able to kind of do, make a mess, and just kind of, I was really kind of lucky to have, I guess, a space that I can just kind of sit there and do that. And I think, and then I think we did, I guess, like a group class end of year show, and by that point, I also got really into printmaking as well. So thin layer of like sort of A4 plastic, and then you lay it over a photo and you like etch. So you sort of like trace the photo. But it's just like a thin plastic A4 sheet. And yeah, what you do, you sort of get like a pointy needle scratchy thing. And it's just kind of like, say, you'd have an image underneath. So you'd sort of trace over, say, a face. And then once you've kind of etched a whole lot in, you rub really thick ink over it. And then the ink will catch into like the etch marks. But then the bits that aren't etched, you can kind of sort of like rub, and then you can sort of like, say, get highlights or something like that. So it's really hard to explain. I know I've probably got some in the garage. I probably should go grab it. But what you get is these really cool, I don't know, it was just this kind of like shortcut to being able to produce, say, a face. I was always so bad at drawing faces. So it was this really kind of cool way just to kind of get a head start. And then once you start sort of pushing the ink in and different colored inks, it takes on a life of its own, and then it kind of like reduces that, oh, I've just copied something of something, I've just traced something, and then you start to mess with it and you're like, no, I've just remade it. I don't know, I've made something new that didn't look like this before. So
yeah.
But that unfortunately
an image by scratch. Like you've literally done what people do on the computer when they're manipulating an image by hand.
Yeah. So printmaking was really, really fun. Unfortunately, you need a big table and a big like press thing, so like you feed it through. So that wasn't something I could really replicate at home. Like there were kind of ways that you could kind of do it, and it never worked the same. Like there was just something so cool. It is really like doing, pulling a cast. Like you kind of put the ink on and stuff, and you roll it through, and you're like, don't know what it's going to come out. It's that same kind of thing. Whereas if you're drawing or painting, you're seeing every single step. I kind of like those moments where, yeah, you're just like rolling the dice and being like, oh, what's gonna happen? I hope this works. And that's really exciting. And I think that's a really cool thing about creating is, those pockets where you get to a point and then you're like, I actually don't have any more control beyond this point. And I do, if you're gonna sort of patch it or repair it, but you kind of take that bit of a leap and you're like, oh, and sometimes it fucking works so well, and then sometimes it just doesn't. And that's really cool because that's all learning and that sort of thing. But whilst just going back to, I guess, the finding, sort of interest in art and that kind of thing, I had the opportunity to make, little, I guess, static statues, little quick. So this is how I learned how to use like silicon molds. And it was pretty basic shit. It's just kind of like, you've got a figure, you put it in a cup or something, and you fill it with silicon. So it was cool having that bit of knowledge, and making these static little dudes that have like gas masks. I think back then I wanted to do something like toy making, but I couldn't quite work out what exactly I wanted. And by the time I'd finished making a dude and like maybe half painting it, I would have lost interest and then started another one. So by the end of it, and I don't think many of them have arms either, because I would just look at it too long and I would just be so hard on myself around it. I just kind of be like, oh no, I'll start another one in a different style. And some of them I look back and be like, they're pretty cool. I would love to, I don't know, get them in a bit more of a refined form. They're a little bit kind of like clay-like, and
that's part of the fun sometimes too.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like the stuff. Yeah, I think, my concept of toys and everything in the past 6 months has just fucking changed so much, and like just expanded so much from just kind of being a, I don't know, maybe what's the name? Not the name. Like manufactured sort of toys. But now I'm kind of like, I have no interest really in buying that many manufactured toys, and all I want to start accumulating is just weird, crazy shit, like all that stuff that's in the background for you, like just stuff that, I'm
not gonna lie, man. It's funny because you might be like one of the few people with a collection that I sit there, like I go nuts. You even had your, it's like a Sith book. That thing blows my mind.
Do you want me to get it?
That's up to you, man. But like I said, your collection is insane. I don't know if many realize like what a true collector you are, and like what a fan you are. Like that thing is so rad, man.
It's nuts. Hopefully it won't lock up.
Like,
pretty cool. And then
dude, I don't know if anybody really knows. Like, some people fall. Like, I know you have quite the following on your Sam One's collection, but like, I don't know amongst like, the toy homies if they realize like how much you like. You know the lore, you know the history. You actually love it. You enjoy it. You're very passionate about it. I don't know, man. It blows my mind. You even looking behind you there, like right off the hop, I even had to kind of chuckle because you sat down and I was like, "Fuck! All these guys are putting me to shame every time." These guys are like, "Oh, Crumbs has a little toy wall. I'll show him a toy wall."
I did, like, I'll be dead set honest. I was like, man, if I'm doing an interview with Crumbs, I gotta have the collection behind me, because every time, like other times we chat, I'll just be sitting like in the kitchen or in the garage, and it's like, it's not that cool to look at because it's like a dirty garage door. It's all like, yeah. So today I was like, oh, I gotta set up like a good space. I reckon I could have done a little bit more with the lighting and maybe like a couple of spotlights or something, but I actually did change the light bulb because it was like a bit too dim. So Yeah, now I feel like a douchebag because I'm like really considered.
I get it, man. I noticed that it was very dark in the corner, and I actually increased the brightness on my video. Went there.
Nice.
And I've still got these big old bags and dark mustache. This is how she goes. What if jokes is that you're sitting in the toy room. I think part of why we never see you sitting there is because you don't stop, man. We have all like, for one, anybody who's never seen Tiddy Bean on a live, you'll notice it. Like if you watch him on a live, it's like he's painting something over here, and then he's in the garage real quick, and he's pulling some casts, and then he's rummaging through the bin, and he's asking people about some like figures. And if you've ever seen that like fishing kit, that thing is packed to the it's like when you meet like a 6-year-old girl and they've got a bead collection and they open up this million beads. Like that, and he's like, oh, I've got some spare parts, and all of a sudden just unclips this case. These are my heads, and it's just like overflowing with heads, and you're just like, wow. And what's trippy is you'll look at certain things and be like, I just didn't really know what to do with those arms right now, so I just like toss them to the side until I think about it.
Yeah.
And that's where you end up, like, not only do you have more pieces than anybody I've ever seen casting, but you have the most wide range of your characters that I've ever seen. The Acolyte, the Maintenance Jones, the Death Stalkers, the Mummy Stalkers, Frankenstalkers, like I can't even list them all, man. The further down your page even you go, like, I'll admit, I joked you through the one day because I felt like a bit of a goof because we were chatting, and I was just so excited about your work. I was scrolling through your page, seeing all the stuff that it was clearly before I started following you, so I'm like, what is this? Oh, what is that? And then all of a sudden you realize that like this human being sitting there being like, dude, I get it. I'll message you a chance to like every picture from the year 2020 for me to get. Meanwhile, you're like, I just like it, and I'm brainwashed to double click on everything I like.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't kind of know. I think just when I would, actually probably for one thing, how it sort of started. So the resin I initially started using, so when I started up TiddyBeanToys and sort of started the kit bashing and casting in 2020 was a quick cure resin. So I'll be done in like 15 minutes. So I could, even if I didn't have that many molds, I could just punch out lots of parts. The actual like painted stuff, that's where I'm not hugely, that's where I start to question myself, and then it never kind of hits the light of day. But the good thing with the Born of Filth dudes was you could have the bright colors, sort of, not bright, but sort of bold colors, so reds and blues or something like that. And then to do the ink over the top, it just kind of like settled everything down, because I think I'd sort of put paint on a an arm and be like, it's too harsh. It needs some, it doesn't need dents, it doesn't need scratches, it just needs a bit of grime. And then once I started slapping the ink on, and it just sank into all the details of the sculpts on the the original sculpts. For a lot of them, it's just like a clung, and I was like, holy shit, these are insane. And it was just slapping a bit of sort of ink over it, and it just transformed it from this really kind of thing that just I don't know, it looked cheesy and just kind of a bit crap, to this really kind of dark, grimy, this kind of weird. And I think this way the ink, I guess using ink in general, you kind of get that watercolory splotches and bits, and it just just elevates like all the details. And all of a sudden you kind of like, wow, maybe this dude's got like some sort of weird thing on his face, and before putting the ink on, and it could be just a matter of a bit of mold release not washing off, but things start to like cling, and then again, this is like one of those points where it's sort of like a bit out of your control. You don't really know where the ink is going to stick and where it's not. And a lot of the time where it doesn't stick, you're like, sweet, I've got this big patch. What am I going to do here? Am I just going to build it up? It was really cool. It started to get into that sort of unpredictability of, I actually don't know what this piece is going to look like. So I don't draw at all. I've never put pen to paper through at TiddyBeanToys. Actually, this is probably to answer the question as well, like, why do I cast so much? It's because I put things, I'll arrange things and be like, nah, that's cool, I'll swap the heads around. So I guess that's my version of like planning and sketching, is to get a whole bunch of pieces, and whether that's a whole bunch of the same pieces but different colors, or mixing it, and I'll just kind of like shuffle them around. And that's a lot of that kind of earlier stuff where it started to get a bit more like fluoro, and I basically just dump my parts out on the table and try and sort out and swap and take photos, and then swap them around, and then forget to take a photo, swap them, and be like, no, there was a good one in there somewhere, and I've just it's gone forever, because which sometimes it would be really, really fun doing that. Then other times it was so frustrating to like not be able to, you're just looking at it, you're like, oh, I'd love it, but it's shit, there's just something not working, and not to be able to identify what that is really frustrating. But I don't really have those moments anymore. I think I've kind of refined some of that process, and I still don't write anything down or draw anything, but I feel like I'm not having to pull all the parts out and do it, I can kind of visualize it a bit more in my brain and that kind of thing. But I also just fucking love casting. Like, I love pouring resin. I love seeing what's going to come out on the other side. Like, that's the best thing about the marbling stuff is, you know, I have no idea what's going to come out beyond any sort of like imperfections or leaks or anything like that. It's just such a rush to like crack it open and go, yeah, like this is nuts. And then the other times when you crack it open and you're absolutely shattered and you're like, shit. If I don't have any parameters, I'll get too overwhelmed and confused. But if I've just kind of got a box of pieces, I might be low on resin, and I'm like, well, let's go into the box. And then so many times things that have come out have been, you know, super popular. Like the Acolyte was gone within a minute, I think, of uploading it, and I've never had that happen before. And I think I originally started building the Acolyte, I think it might have been as a mystery figure, or I was just bored. Like, there was no kind of like cool plan to it. But then once he started to come together, I was like, this is fucking cool. Yeah, when things just line up and you're like, and these could be parts I've been using. I don't have a huge range of parts I use. Like, they're all probably 5 or 6 figures, I'm not sure. But when you just find that combination that it looks nothing like the other figures, it doesn't look like the original, and it's just there, and you're like, man, that's so cool. Like, part of you is kind of like, how didn't I think about that before? But you're too excited to be like, damn, we've got a new character here. And yeah, it's super fun. It's such a big part of the thrill of toy making. Is like, half the time I don't even know what I'm going to make. I obviously know when I'm making a mummy stalker and a Frankenstalker and want to try a new style, but yeah, when I get those moments of like kit bash, it's awesome. It's just so cool to just see what I've got on hand rather than being like, I need a character with like a really cool arm. It's like, nah, what arms have I got? And really trying to incorporate some of the older casts that I've used. So the Deathstalker arms I kind of want to do something with again. Quite proud of how the shoulder guard, I love the shoulder guard on, and I was like, I can't believe I actually did this. But also just doing more custom parts and sculpts rather than just purely kit bash a bunch of random limbs of Star Wars figures or, you know, monsters.
It was just interesting that you mentioned that you like symmetry. You really like things to be in perspective, like the proper sizes and scale.
Yeah.
But then what's really funny is you say when the painting comes in, you don't feel very confident. And yet one of your favorite parts is when you get to play with the marbling and you leave it up to fate of what happens in the cast. It's funny to me because you like to take control of like building, shaping, figuring out that part. But the moment it comes to something that you're like, I don't know how my paint is going to be, you almost don't even want to have a say. You're like, I'll pick the pigments, but then I leave it up to the mold. Obviously, I got some of your figures around the holiday season, so I ripped into that bad boy.
I don't go over a Frankenstein, but you put Frankenstein with a Franken saber, and oh yeah. So I'm gonna rip into these guys. I've been going nuts about the Frankenstalker, but the reality is I kind of grabbed a couple goodies because the shipping, right? But the shipping, don't let the shipping stop you. The prices on Tiddy Bean's work is phenomenal. And for the quality that you're getting, why am I even showing you it in the bag? Pull it out. Yep. Smoother than I expected. I'm glad I made sure to lick that all up before I even just showed you guys. And, oh man. Okay. These magnets are so strong that for a moment there, I was actually concerned that these are pegged. So, Tiddy Bean. Wow! Okay, I'm very happy with this, guys. I'm gonna be right honest with you. I usually never talk about pricings. I'm almost certain this was in like that $10 range. Tiddy Bean has some beautiful pieces. Look at that little bit of purple right there. I almost want to I can do what I want. So I did. Yeah. And even the packaging, right? I know it's silly, but I talk about that all the time. It's just that extra little, this was just a little touch. It didn't have to be a crazy card art. Though you artists are nuts on your card arts and very talented. But he just, he built the same luster and the same, just doing that. And I touched it and licked it right off the hop. It wasn't even hard. Alrighty. Dude, oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, guys. My goodness. Sorry. Oh, I'm getting a little bit excited. This is just... Okay. Boom. Gonna show that off right off the hop. This is the Frankenrot. These are some earlier figures that he had. I was talking to One Trick Pony. I'm curious because One Trick Pony had some pegged figures. And I'm curious how I'm gonna stumble on that. Nope, magnets. Magnets. TiddyBean again, dude. Your magnets are so strong. And I love actually seeing, personally, this isn't even like a negative commentary. I love seeing like the evolution of the figure. That other one, you can tell, I believe you probably had a pressure pot at that point. And I don't actually criticize anybody not using a pressure point because personally, it's a handmade product. You're making a handmade, homemade product. I do not criticize that whatsoever. At the end of the day, the tools you have should not be a commentary on the quality. So excited about that. TiddyBean, you nailed that, man. TiddyBean, you have great cuts. I'm gonna popularize. I'm gonna like copyright that. Sorry, I went quiet there for a minute. Sometimes I kind of forget that there's technically human beings that are gonna be watching this, and I'm just sitting here staring at it. If you guys know Crumbs, Crumbs loves candy. Crumbs loves sweets and sugars and candy. And so the more that your pieces look like candy... TiddyBeanToys. Out of this world. Killing it. Okay. I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm like slowly digging through here. And like an animal, I went right for the goods. Oh, I'm so excited about this. Okay. TiddyBean is responsible for creating these. These are brain drips. I have been so intrigued by the brain drips for so long, so I'm so excited to have an alternate head there. Yeah, I'm gonna pop that on a body later. And of course, TiddyBean stickers, TiddyBean stickers, TiddyBean sticker, another TiddyBean sticker. Sorry, TiddyBean stickers! Woo! TiddyBean stickers. This is the guy I was talking about, though. This is where all the hard work has come to. I mentioned the magnets, right? I mentioned how strong the magnets were. The saber is even attached right to the shoulder joint. That's how strong they are. So I'm going to put that there for a second. Frankenstalker. Look at the colors on that. I am so pleased with that. The Instagram didn't quite get the legs. They're a nice, like, off purpley Easter pink. But quite a contrast still in the arm pink. I'm going to switch out to the red labor. The red labor! Because that's what I meant right there. So I switched it out for that thing. That's what these are now called. My figure comes with multiple labors! Ta-da! Look at that. Look at that. Frankenstalker. So Frankenstein, if he goes to outer space and equips himself, this almost reminds me of the old, and I know some of you back at home are going to know the exact kit bash maybe for that, but for me personally, it reminds me of the old Legos, where they would have like the scuba diver outfit, and personally I'd always cut the heads off of it, so that way I could make my guy look extra rad. I didn't really know what the pack now added, because I had chopped off the helmet part, but then it had this vent part. You guys know, Frankenstalker has that. I love the colors. TiddyBean, you knocked it out of the park. I literally feel like there's just such a pile. Your work is so nice. I'm really pleased with it. Great quality figure. My babies.
The sign of how good it's kind of like, yeah, like, no, this is nuts. Fuck everything. This guy is an amazing artist. Is that probably would have been around like September or October that I was going to your site going, but the shipping. And then I finally reached out. I remember I saw your figures around your brother's 40th birthday. You released a phenomenal set that had, I think, 5 Stormtrooper Death Stalkers.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was a dope drop, man. And I remember seeing that, and the moment I saw that, even I was just kind of like, who is this guy? I'd already seen your work. It was really cool. I'd wanted some. The shipping was kind of like but then I saw that and it was like, no, you're so good. And I think that might have even been around the time we kind of started talking. And then I finally was like, man, I hate to ask, but what is up with the shipping? And you were like, it is what it is. And I was an amateur at the time, so I was sitting there being like, But at the same time, now I understand. I'm like, yeah, what the fuck do you expect? Because I explained to somebody today, and I try to actually keep this mentality myself now, and I try and like instill it in myself. I buy the toys from this person. I'm paying this company to deliver the toy. The moment that I've paid you for the toy and the toy is completed, and you're now like, what would you like me to do with it? Are you biking here? Are you going to drop it? How do you want to get this? You know, like, envelope it up and put it through this service provider that I've heard of that sounds good. In my opinion, you're like, cool, that's what you'd like me to do? You're sure you don't want to just come get it? Fine. That's on their hands because that's what you wanted to pay to do. The next wave of Frankenstalkers, is that going to be the plan? To help them out?
Yeah, so I've only done one. Yeah, so I've done one Frankenstalker. I think it was the first carded Frankenstalker, which was all white and came with a white head and then a green glow-in-the-dark head. And for some reason at the time, I don't know why I hadn't done it again. It was just kind of like a long time between drinks. It was this weird thing. Sometimes I do actually kind of know why, because the head, I get really annoyed if the heads are kind of like just a little bit. So with the polarity and the magnets, it would just give you a little tilt. And I could say, the person buying it probably didn't give a shit at all, but it just didn't sit well with me. So then I kind of experimented a little bit on the side, not necessarily just always with that kind of in mind, because I never really wanted the Frankenstalkers to be like that, to be like the next phase. I did want to do a figure with swappable heads like the brain dudes, but it was just kind of like the Frankenstalker was the Frankenstalker. Like it was, I didn't really want it to change too much. There was something really important just about how, I don't know, recognizable it is. Like you kind of see you see the head and you're like, that's Frank. No one else got a flat top except for Flat Top and Dick Tracy, but that sort of head, like it was just kind of like, oh, I don't really want to swap this around. And I always like the idea of like when I'd sort of buy toys, knowing that there's a full head in that cavity. Like on my car keys, I've got a little Boba Fett Lego guy, and you can just kind of like slightly look under. You can't take the helmet off, but you can slightly look under, and it's got like the whiskers. And I'm like, there's a fucking head under there, and I love that. Like even though I can't see it, but I know that it's there. So I really like that about the sunken kind of heads, that they are full heads. Occasionally I need to trim them down. Sometimes they might be a little short, but I'd say 95% of Frankenstalkers have a full Frankenstalker, a full Frankenstein's monster head in there. But with the Mummy Stalker, that's probably going to be a bit more of a thing because I'm not sure. For one thing, the cavity where the head sits in, it actually fits really well with other heads that I've got lying around. So, and I think there's something like, I sort of see Frankenstalker as a bit of a bruiser. He's a big kind of your Darth Vader-y, not like the ultimate like Darth Vader, but he's a brute, like he's a bruiser. Whereas the Mummy Stalker, he's got the kind of knife, he's got the kind of stance. I want him to be that sort of stealthy in the shadows, a bit of a grimy guy. And it'd be cool if he had different disguises. I'm like, his whole body looks exactly the same, but swap the head and all of a sudden it's maybe, Wolfman or who else fits in there? I've got a couple of heads.
I even like the idea of, personally, like when I was thinking of the heads, for me it was even the idea of with Frankenstalker being able to switch out the head with another Frankenstein head.
Oh yeah.
I've mentioned it to you before. I'm really weird. My brain is fixated on this, and I know to some degree you must be like, they're different. They're toys. But I can't stop thinking about it. For me, it became like fixated with the Mummy Stalker, where it was like Frankenrot and Frankenstalker. For my brain, unfortunately, it like Frankenrot leveled up.
Yeah.
And so it's hard not to think of the Mummy Stalker as well. And I ended up grabbing the Nev. It's hard not to picture it as it's almost kind of like that's your dude, and he's actually like leveling up, getting new gear, progressing to the next stage, facing the new challenges. And I don't know why my brain wants to just like do that. But that's where I almost wondered with the heads, because then you can actually take something like your Frankenrot head and actually be like, oh yeah, and what's cool with my Frankenrot is the... And I can tell you're sitting there being like, I won't do it for that purpose. My fucking toys how they are.
No, but I really do love that. I love there was a point, and I don't know, I'm sometimes too scattered to just kind of stick with one broader concept. So I think initially when I wanted to drop the Mummy Stalker, I wanted to do the Mummy Stalker as he is, and then you can take the head out, and you basically have like a mummy torso as well. So it's basically, you've got him in the suit, and then you strip the parts, and you've got him out of the suit. It just kind of didn't really go to that place, because logistically, it's a lot more parts going in. There's a lot more magnets for basically if the mummy stalker's say on display, you've kind of cool, yeah, I've got a cool looking mummy stalker, then I've got this magnet pile of like sort of spare parts.
Right.
So there was sort of a part of it like, how does this, without just kind of being a little pile in the corner, how do we kind of incorporate it? And then it was sort of like, and then once I started to mess around, like the legs would stick out really far. There was going to be a lot more altering than I'd probably anticipated. And yeah, and then I probably got distracted, and you know, I found some like new marbling colors, so I was like, oh shit, what's this over here? And then never went back to the thing. But I really like that, like upgrading armor, and it's something that I still, and I've got a couple of very rough kit bashes that I've done of like say an alternative Frankenstalker with an open hand that's, you know, can hold a blaster. So I had a moment of, yeah, I think I was out of magnets or resin, and I was like, I need to like do something and create this. So there's sort of like they're there, but I love to make them and then they'll sit there, and I might come back around in like a year's time and find them and be like, holy shit, I can use this. Hopefully, because that's kind of what happened to Mummy Stalker. I started it and then it just sat there for a good couple of months until, and this is no bullshit, I sat down and watched the Crumbs Creative Corner with Scum Avoid, Garrett at Bootleg Bonanza, and One Trick Pony, and yourself. And I was like, fucking, why am I sitting here just watching this without making something? It was like, fuck it, I've got an hour after work on a Friday. I'm going to sit down and actually watch this video. And yeah, it was within 5 minutes. I was like, I can't not be sitting here and like make something. I need to get onto this. So yeah, and that's no bullshit. That's not just kind of like blowing smoke up your ass. I couldn't not do it. Oh, you. Yeah, I couldn't not do it. And it was such a cool thing, because I was so scared to do a follow-up to Frankenstalker, because I was also scared. I didn't really know what, I had a vague idea, but and I knew what limbs I wanted to use, but I didn't know what custom parts I wanted to put on. So yeah, it just kind of went, dude, don't be scared, just fucking do it. Like, these dudes are doing it and they're doing an awesome job. And yeah, just feeling that through a screen, not sort of having to sit there and, you know, really kind of like ponder and read and take it all in and reflect afterwards and be like, that was very inspirational. I'm gonna use some of this stuff. It was like, no, I'm doing it now. And then yeah, within a couple of weeks, I think I'd finished the figure. So which was pretty cool. And then in finishing the figure, like I'd get the arm right and I'd be like, cool, he's gonna have like a mummy arm. And then I broke the thumb off and was like, oh fuck. And I had the shoulder thing all sculpted and nice, and was like, what am I gonna do? And I'm like, well, shit, I'm gonna lop the arm off and then put a Stormtrooper arm on it. And was like, holy shit, it's the same length. Like the scale sort of matched, and I was like, and it was really lucky. And I don't think I would have put this much thought into it beforehand, but it just so happened to be the hand that was the blaster holder hand, because you sort of got one hand like that and the other hand's like that, and you can't hold shit in that. But then the first time I pulled the Mummy Stalker was fucking unreal. Like, I've not been that excited in a long time. And it was again that moment of like, how did I really make this? Like, this isn't the first one. This is my fidget one that I use for when I'm anxious, I guess.
I still think that's, and this is no disrespect to any of your creations so far. Everything that I've seen you making is so cool and wild, but I think that Mummy Stalker in general is like my all-time favorite designed toy so far, man. That thing is so friggin' cool, man.
Thank you. Yeah, and like, yeah, it was just this, it was weird. Like, I was honestly very impressed with myself, which doesn't happen often. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, that's a cool idea, and then it's over, the thought's gone and it's kind of over. And to be very brutally honest, it was, with massive highs comes, you know, massive lows sometimes. So what was really interesting, so I did my first couple of pulls of the Mummy Stalker and was like, I can't believe I've fucking done this. Like, this is so cool. It works. It's in scale. Like, it looks like a toy that I would like to buy. And then it was sort of like a couple of days later, it might have even been the next day, it kind of started to set in, being like, yeah, you've made something fucking cool, but like, now you've got to do something with this. Like, there was this kind of like, well, shit, like, yeah, it looks really good now, but it can't just look like this forever. And where do I go now? Because for so long it was grinding towards getting the Mummy Stalker done and seeing it slowly come together. And then it sort of got up there and you're like, holy shit, where do I go now? I didn't plan for what the first drop was going to look like. I didn't sort of say, all right, the first ones are going to be a whole bunch of neon green, and the next ones are going to have red heads, and the next ones, it was just like, shit, where do I go now? Yeah. Oh, but it's just kind of, it's also about being patient and kind of, and experimenting, whether it's with the marbling or the inks, and just kind of being like, all right, like what just kind of like looks cool, rather than having this really big first drop of fucking all the same figures and this pressure. I was like, I don't actually know what I want these to look like. So the Mummy Stalker drop came out as like 4 different styles of marble ink. I was starting to take it a little bit too seriously, and was kind of like, you know, this is really cool, but you know, this is also needs to be fun and fulfilling and not something that's going to really bum me out and make me anxious, because yeah, it's really hard for me anyway to decide to commit to a certain run of figures. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, I'll fuck around with it, then I'll kind of start to get a little bit bored, or casting the same figure 4 times in a day, and I'm like, I need to do something else. So that's why I'll try and switch out.
And One Trick Pony and I were even sitting there talking to you about it, and I was like, you know, man, like, I really was expecting them to be a little bit darker. Like, they could have been more gothic. It's winter. And he was like, I love the colors, Tiddy. And that's why you can't fucking please everybody. Trying to do a fucking drop.
I guess sort of trends that come up that, you know, either influence you directly or kind of like indirectly. And maybe, you know, yeah, I was doing the sort of bright ones because yeah, it's summer, but then at the same time, I've always loved fucking with the bright stuff, but then taking a hard left into like the dark, grimy stuff, because again, if I focus too long on something, I'll never release it. So if I can kind of like alternate, things actually usually move rather than just piling up in the garage.
Analysis paralysis.
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, I'm really, really bad for it. I'll work on maybe 4 or 5 figures at a time. And sometimes you're like waiting for one to cure or waiting for the ink to dry on one. But other times it's purely like, this is annoying me right now. I'm going to go and do that one and then come back around. And whether that's something to do with my mood or the week that it is, or just the stuff that I'm liking on the, you know, on Instagram, it's the only place to really see this stuff. But I feel like it's okay to sort of take your time and be patient with releases. A month ago, I can't actually remember how long Mummy Stalker's been out, maybe 2 months. Yeah, I was completely overwhelmed. I didn't know where to go with it. And it kind of really started to sour that super big high that I had of like creating something that really appealed to me. Yeah, so it's kind of, I don't know, getting comfortable with your own style.
You've now released the Mummy Stalker, and you've even said you're going to kind of try and hone in probably on like what that looks like going forward. But I know for a fact there's going to be people who probably see ones from your experimentation phase, but they just haven't found you yet. And there's times like I even messaged you the one night about the all-white Frankenstalker. I was like, how did I? This thing's sick as hell. Like, it's all white, like a blank, I guess. But the fact that you managed to just get a all white is actually like, that is so sick.
That was pretty cool. That figure in particular, because I think I just got the pressure pot as well, and I think I got the bubble delivery for the things. Never done a card before, and it would have been probably the same weekend that I did my brother's the 4-pack of the Stormtroopers. So that was basically the first carded figure I did, and you're totally right. I think once people kind of saw that, they were like, "That's kind of cool, man!" Like,
dude, that thing literally looked like a legit FL anniversary edition. It worked perfectly because we had all just been bombarded by the 40th anniversary Star Wars shit. So we were used to seeing the gold 40.
Yeah.
You had this beautiful like arrangement of them, varying in like was it the black, white, and a clear?
Yeah, black, white, clear, and then black, white marble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that set literally looked like an anniversary set.
Yeah, that was again one of them points of like, holy shit, I actually made this, and it was cool. Like I went and bought a printer and stuff, and just kind of had all the materials and just kind of did it. And I'd never seen my figure in a bubble before. I think I might have put my figure, like I'd cut open a Draco knuckle duster and was just kind of like, oh, I wonder what a Frankenstalker would look like. And then I'm like, damn, that looks cool, but it's fucking Draco knuckle duster. Like it's killer, it's all there. It's like, it's not the same. And then I started putting the bubbles on and just went, shit, like I printed that paper, I fucking sprayed the adhesive, I did the dots, I obviously did the figures. There was just something super, super satisfying about seeing your own figure under a bubble and being like, holy shit, like it. My figures are mostly bagged and they kind of look cool, but fuck, I didn't buy bagged toys as a kid. I bought fucking toys on cards, like, and to have that kind of like this weird, yeah, it was wild. And then to do four figures, because I guess it never went on sale because I went to my brother, but yeah, my first carded figure was 4 figures on one card. And then I think, yeah, definitely it was around that November where things sort of picked up. Instead of kind of going, oh, that looks lame, no one's going to see that. And I'm like, no, maybe I think it's not great, but you know, people out there. And that's where I really like adding stuff to the store that could be a little bit fucking jarring, like the new Maintenance Jones. I don't know. I don't even know if I particularly like him that much.
He's catching on. He is catching on. what's tripping me is like everybody's got like Maintenance Jones fever now. We see him and we're yeah, I like that guy. And
Yeah.
what's trippy is it started off for me, like I even told you, and I'm sorry, I know this. It's one of those like rude, weird things because like if it appeals to you, then it appeals to you for a reason. But I thought he looked dorky, and that's what appealed at first. For me, I was like, that dude's such a little dork. But now I don't even see him as a weird, like little like, ha, you're a dork. In the world that you've built with your characters, now I almost kind of wonder like, how fucked are you, Maintenance Jones? Why are you so like? Are you like that weird dude that like the whole movie you don't really see much of him, but every time you do see him, you're kind of jarred because he's just like really uncomfortable?
Yeah. It's the quiet ones you've got to look out for. And people have been telling me that my whole life. So, you know, not being like weird or not. Nah. He was, and I think there's something you touched on there, like the universe. I fucking love universe building. Like I love immersive environments, video games. I think for a good 2 years straight, maybe more, I'd read, just constantly reading Star Wars Legends novels and listen. So I'd be reading a novel and then I'd go to sleep to help me sleep and listen to the audiobooks. So, and it was just, and this is a huge part of like, you're hearing about these characters, you're kind of getting the descriptions in the audiobooks, you're hearing their voices, you're going into sort of this great detail. And I was like, I fucking love that Star Wars, the Star Wars universe is huge and building that. And I think my stuff sort of started there, but then I'm kind of like, actually, I think we can start taking a bit of a step into its own thing. Instead of saying, you know, Chewbacca's in, you know, this universe, it's kind of like, no, I don't even think there's Wookiees in this universe until I probably make one. But I love that universe building and the way, yeah, a lot of my characters are quite hostile. Like, you know, they're called Death Stalkers and Mummy Stalkers and Frankenstalkers and Space Scalpers and all very long, impractical names that I can't remember. And that was on purpose because, like, it's fucking stupid, but like having these really long, complicated names, I just found hilarious as well. But that's beside the point.
There is a very Spaceballs feel.
Like, yeah, like that's my shit. Like me and my brother, like Spaceballs, Star Wars, toys, all of that. Like it's very rich. It's very raw. It's still very fresh, and it's something that. And I think I look at my pieces and be like, wow, that's dark, and I love horror and all that kind of thing. But I'm like, it needs to be just something a bit. It doesn't need to be light. It doesn't need to be necessarily comical, but it maybe just needs to cleanse the palate a little. But at the same time, you know, Maintenance Jones carries around a hammer and he can switch his brains out. So there's, you know, there's a few things.
He just stands there staring at you all weird. Fucking face.
Yeah. And but it was kind of cool to have a more non-threatening, dark kind of character. And I put him in the shop and I just really loved, he was one that it was just a bit of a spare part sort of thing. I don't even know where I started with him. I think I found the Bosk purple torso and was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then the yellow, and I was like, yeah, the yellow and the purple. And he sat in the shop and it was just kind of like, yeah, this dude's cool. Yeah, maybe he's a bit lame actually. I don't know. He just doesn't really have much. He's not dark enough. He's not fucking brutal. Like, and as soon as someone, I think, messaged me about him, or there was just something kind of built up, and I think I might have noticed he might have been in people's carts for a bit, and I was like, there's something there, but I don't know what it is. And he's great, and he was just a really good, combination of scale and limbs. So he's got Michael Myers legs, he's got the AT driver's arms, he's got the hollowed out Rancor head, switchable brain, and he's got the Michael Myers hammer. And I think what makes him a little bit special for me is I don't have the mold of the arms anymore. I don't have the torso mold. You know, I've got the parts. I just really can't be asked remaking them when there's a few other things I really need to like start making molds of.
Well, okay, so I've got to interrupt really quickly then. How did I fuck you on getting the yellow arms then?
So the I've got the mold. It's just not in the greatest condition. So it took a little bit of aftercare. I had the torso. The torso was fine. The torso was probably like 6 months old. I just did a whole bunch. As I do, I just do a whole bunch of casts in different colors or whatever. So, but yeah, I had to do the arms. The legs I had. But it was also good because they're fucking good arms, man. Like, they're really good. They've just dropped off. It's like Saturday afternoon. We're in lockdown, man. Like, I can't fucking do anything even if I wanted to. Not that I would do anything except make toys or talk shit to you anyway. So I'm exactly where I need to be.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is typically when we do our mutual striptease anyways. So it kind of...
Absolutely. This is the usual time. This is usually the saucy time in the afternoon. You know, it's not too late in the day, but it's not too early in the night. But it also lines up great with time zones.
And it sets the tone for the rest of the day. Like,
absolutely.
If you're already stripping by noon. Evening's gonna be the best.
Oh, you're gonna have Tiddy Bean all day in your face.
Okay, yeah, wait. Where did Tiddy Bean come from? Where did this Tiddy Bean come from?
Ooh, the origin of the name. Yeah, great question. And I get it a lot. And one thing, yeah, everyone's like Tiddy Bean or Tiddy Bean. I'm pretty sure everyone gets now that it's Tiddy Bean. So honestly, it's pretty silly. So we were, so COVID happened. Obviously, COVID happened. And me and my partner were binging a lot of TV. So we've been, I was like, there's this cartoon, Rick and Morty. She loves cartoons and I love Rick and Morty. So I was like, let's see. So we binged, 4 seasons of Rick and Morty. And there's an episode, I think it's Vindicators 3, season 3 or something, great episode. And there's a point where the team that they're with end up being like lovers and they start saying their pet names. So one of the pet names was Tiddy Bean and the other pet name was something stupid. And we just lost it. We were like, Tiddy Bean, that is so funny. And this was before I think I was like making toys or anything. So
That would have been Thousand Ants.
Yeah. Oh, and the chick, what's her name?
Blew up Tiddy Bean.
Oh.
I don't know how. I've seen that episode a billion times. I somehow have never been like, Tiddy Bean!
I'm so glad you get it. No one else has gone, oh shit, like 1 fucking million, whatever it is, like, and you know the episode, like,
Because when
everyone's like,
she kills him, Rick goes, oh man, she killed Tiddy Bean. Like, she actually uses the pet name.
So there was that, and we were kind of like, and we loved it because my partner and I, we did a long time in lockdown, so the way that the names that we would call each other were completely bent. Like they were just silly and weird, mostly built off fart jokes or just what we've watched on TV. And then I got to a point where I was taking photos of my collection, putting on Instagram for same month's collection, and then it was like, I'm gonna start doing this myself, and I'm like, fuck, I need like a name, like and I was like, and I didn't like write a list, I didn't rattle off a whole bunch of names. It was just kind of like, what about TiddyBeanToys? And she's like, that sounds cool. And I'm like, and part of it was, if the name got a bit silly and like didn't really catch on, at least I think TBT, like TiddyBeanToys, would kind of make a good logo. Like I'm not a text guy at all. I'm not like I don't know nothing about lettering, but I was kind of like, I can see how that might work. And then, but then it was also almost a bit of a challenge to have this really silly name, but try and make really good shit. And then to get to a point of being really skilled, but having like a really dumb name like TiddyBeanToys. And then there was definitely a period where I'm like, oh no, I need to do a rebrand. And I'm like, nah, because it's too funny. Not meant to be any kind of like sexist thing or anything like that. It just sounded good. Like it just rolled off the tongue.
Yeah.
It just kind of fit. And again, it was one of those really abstract things of like, if someone remembers that particular silly pet name from that episode, they'll be like, hey. But so many people have asked and they're like, yeah, I don't really watch Rick and Morty, or I don't remember that episode. I'm like, fuck. You're like the first person to be like, hey, I've seen that episode. And oh, he killed Tiddy Bean. And I think it's that weird, I don't know, I don't even know if it's a juxtaposition, but yeah, it's kind of like a stupid name, but I take it very, very seriously.
Yep.
But I think I'm trying to give the impression that I'm like, no, I don't even stress about this stuff. Like, I'm really chilled. And it's like, no, I take this quite seriously.
Well, and you do it well. It is noticed that you do it well too. Very organized and like proficiently as well. So, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat. I'm gonna fire some questions off at you and see how we do with them. Feeling good?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first one's actually gonna be one that's gonna cause mobs. Do you prefer backers or no backed figures?
Ooh, what a great question. Oh, fuck, I was not expecting that. It's pretty dumb. Like you look around the collection, everything's in packets, everything's in boxes.
There.
Backers, but at the same time, I fucking love buying non-backed figures because then I don't have this like weird thing of like, I can't take that out. Like, I love being able to get a bag figure because I can usually take it out without destroying the packaging. I've got there's like a pile of like my bags from Trash Joy, Skull and Void. I keep the bags and I just go, backers.
Yeah.
Shit. I don't know.
So what I find interesting is even I myself, everybody like kind of thinks like, oh, Crumbs hates backers. And it's like, no, I respectfully, when they come in a backer and it plays into the piece and it's not to be removed, I respect that stuff. And if I can access the figure, that makes me all the happier because I do need to touch it. But it depends on the piece.
It kind of does. Like I don't know. There's some like Epoch. Shit, can't really say.
Yeah, but how did you ever take that out of the case? Yeah.
Yeah, like this is fucking nuts. Like holograms and it's coming up really bad in the picture. So something like that, I was just like, damn, like that is everything.
I think everybody's been talking about his backers for a couple months now, man. He's got to break out into the scene like a monster.
That is a fucking like, that's a toy. That's a professional. There's a lot there. There's fucking lore. There's the other figures in the collection. It's not just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna chuck some images in here and some cool shit. It's like, no, this is part of this fucking broader universe with all these crazy characters. And yeah, if I put that in front of someone that is not part of the community, they'd be like, that's a manufactured toy, full backer. Yeah, they wouldn't pick the difference. And that's
and I feel that's one of those ones that when you get it like that, you are kind of like, I'm not gonna take this out of the package because I'm gonna regret taking it out of the package.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say that I haven't taken it out of the package, but I definitely put it back in. No, I took it out because same as you, man. I got to touch it. I've got to be like, and especially as a person that makes these, is like, how did he do that? And assessing it, not kind of pulling it apart, not fucking reverse engineering, but it was just kind of like, how did he do this? But then there wasn't this moment of like, yeah, maybe I'll put the backer in the cupboard and I'll put the figure up with my bootleg collection. It was like, no, this fucking goes up in its packet, push it all back in, get it a good spot. Yeah, like it is. Yeah, that's fucking good, and that's probably one of the best. I don't know whether to put this in. Best like carded figures front and back. I'm only saying this because
it's okay to. It's always okay to compliment another artist and it's not belittling the other artists. That's one of the things in this scene. I find it's so hard not to be like, oh, I think that's like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Oh, but not to say yours isn't really cool. It's kind of. Can we all just agree that like we all get jimmied up and excited, and sometimes it's kind of like that, like that's my favorite song on the album. Oh wait, this is my favorite song on the album. Oh wait, no, this is my favorite song on the album.
When people will post photos of the toys, and I'm like, holy shit, it ended up there, and because some you just never kind of hear from, and then others, will be in contact and say, hey, I got it, and here's the photo, and yeah, it's crazy. Just but because there is such a gap between when I post it and when it arrives, I'm like. It's super nice to see people like share the photos and I really appreciate when people go to the effort of like sharing it and taking photos and then taking multiple photos and then getting more toys to take photos of, and it's mad, it's crazy.
When you have like a super fan like B to the J, he like goes to the extreme to set up these like beautiful shots and stuff. Those guys that take the toy photography, the art of art, it's just oh man, it's cool. It's cool to see that passion where they like I've talked to some of these guys, they're up staying up late after work or whatever because they want to take a really good picture of their new Tiddy Bean piece.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to make it look really good and stuff. And you're like, that's cool. You have that much respect for the artist and the piece. Like, that's what you're doing right now.
It's nuts. It's like, that is probably one of the biggest satisfactions of like people sort of like getting the piece. Like, I'll be honest, I buy pieces of people and I'll put them in the collection and I'll often come in like once a day and just like look at it and go, yeah, this is really nice. Like I've got my buddies around me. I've got this like cool shit to look at. It's bright and fucking, it looks cool and there's lots of nostalgia. But then you've got these dudes that, that buy those same figures and they'll sit there for hours posing them, creating these stories and their own lore with your figures. And it's just like, that's fucking awesome. Like you see, possibly more than I do in these guys sometimes. And that's really, it's really humbling. It's really heartwarming to know that someone sort of sat there for hours setting up, funny like little like dudes like, fighting or getting the lighting right. I remember the first Etsy sale was Frankengreen's Ghost and I sent it off and it was like, oh, exciting. And then he posted this wicked photo and I was like, damn, that's not my toys. But it wasn't like a trick. Like he'd spent time putting, taking that photo and that's what he digs. And it's really, really cool to be able to get an opportunity to be part of that and to be involved in that world.
What's your favorite toy series if you were to have one?
Toy series?
Action figure, toy series?
The expanded universe vintage collection, vintage carded Star Wars figures. There was a really awesome time where they did Mandalorian sets, they did the Bounty Hunter sets. It was fucking crazy. It might have been around the 30th anniversary. But yeah, there were these awesome big packs and it was just unreal. And just like the sculpts on the toys, they were just really, really fucking cool. And then, obviously I had the vintage, the classic cards of,
that is a gorgeous figure. Like at the end of the day, I love the indie world that we're in and I don't think they're comparative whatsoever. But it is every now and then nice to like look back at the old figures and just go, damn, the homies were doing some shit. Like, do you have a favorite figure of yours that you enjoy making the most?
It's a really good question. I'm really enjoying Frankenstalkers at the moment, mainly because they just seem to be coming out quite clean. I guess they're not chewing up the mold. I guess I'm comparing it to Mummy Stalker. Mummy Stalker's mold is expiring, or basically has expired. I need to make a new Mummy Stalker mold. But I made a Frankenstalker mold a couple months ago, and it's just fucking clean. Like, it is just working really well. And I don't think I've had a mold for this long that is just giving me clean pieces and being able to do pretty cool stuff, like maybe something like this.
Yo, and okay, dude, yeah, frig. Sorry, I haven't seen it in its completion. So sorry, because so anybody who's seen this, like, they would have seen the purple and green one potentially that you posted, and that was like the first like hit. And I had to check with you too, because I even asked, I was like, hey, like, am I understanding what's happening here? Like, are you? And I noticed you even mentioned it today, and I was glad you pointed that out, because I always think if you're doing something that's like special, it's cool to like point out that you're doing something special. So I noticed you said you're like, I've casted this twice. Like, I've put this in there, then I've casted it, and so now there's a chemical bond that's happening there. It's not super glued, and it's kind of like boom. Like, that's a big difference, because the moment that you picture this being cut and super glued, someone's like, oh, well, I could do that, and it's like, exactly. No, like, that's not what's happening there. And like, like the odds of that happening so cleanly on a figure.
So this has been a new thing, but before I get to that, let's have a look at it, because this one's for you guys, and I'm trying to get the lighting right.
I think you did an insane job on that, man.
I don't even know if it's going to come up great. I'll probably post photos.
Oh, and I'll steal pictures from you. There's tons of stuff from this. I'll probably be like, hey, I need a picture of this and a picture of that.
So he hasn't got his lightsaber yet, but yeah, it was actually really cool. And this one, so this was a third attempt. So the first attempt was the purple and green. So and the purple and green worked out great. And this is what I loved about. At the time, I fucking hated it, but now I've actually come to appreciate there's a certain thing that I need to do. So with the greens, because the green and then the purple, if there was a really thin layer of purple resin going over those boots and those gloves, you couldn't see it. You put something like white boots and white gloves in with black resin, for like the slightest leak, you're gonna get that film. So there definitely was a film on these ones. So what I learned from that was use it to your advantage. So what I want to do is say, I think I've got some blue limbs and shit, and then do basically the resin that goes over the top needs to be way lighter than the resin that's on the bit that's going to bond to, because it's impossible for me with the molds that I've got at the moment. It's impossible to make some sort of airtight thing where the resin will stop exactly here and none will dribble. It will just, and in the pressure pot as well, I assume the pressure pot just makes it kind of go, I don't know, does something. Maybe I'm not rubber banding it enough, but this, to see the black and white, like the green and purple is really cool. I love green and purple. There's the whole grape thing. We've talked about grapes and Wraith and Rogue Squadron, but to see this come out was pretty nuts. It really kind of just was like, hey, that kind of feels like a real Star Wars figure.
Dude, it's insane. If you consider, yeah, sorry, man, sorry, don't mean to cut you off. I'm just mind blown here. Sorry.
Nah, like it was really this, and this is like a brand new process. And had I not, yeah, it was like a simple thing, and it was this really funny process of doing it the first time with the purple and green, and it coming out really, really well. And I was like, damn, I can fucking nail this. And then doing a second one that was the black and white, that came out dog shit. It came out terrible. It basically just came out, the feet and the hands were all grey. I couldn't pick the resin off, thinking that it would be like a nice thin layer of resin I could just peel off and then brisk white underneath. It didn't happen like that. So it was really cool to be like, all right, what about doing a fresh set of limbs in a different resin? So you got two different resins. So the white is a Quick Cure 305 smooth on, which is the usual opaque stuff, and then the black is all smooth on 326. So they're probably, the rigidity is probably pretty similar, but I was kind of like, I really like the idea of having two different resins in one figure, or two different resins in one limb, which is kind of cool. And the good thing was with the 305, the white stuff, you don't need to add pigment. So it comes up stark white anyway. So I didn't need to fuck around too much. Basically softly scratch the resin off. You get this really stark, beautiful contrast. Unfortunately, I haven't done his lightsaber yet, so that might have to be a surprise.
Dude, honestly, I can't get over that, man. I'm really glad you went in and explained that too, because like, I couldn't have ever understood everything that went into that, to do that. And what's kind of insane is I hope that somebody who just caught what you were saying there, like I hope that they're all sitting there realizing like the implications. Ready for all new types of Frankenstalkers and mummy stalkers where the gradients are like the weirdest, craziest, hardest you've ever seen because of how he's going about it. So it's just going to be insane. And dude, like if you start going off the deep end and doing marbles, like marbling hands and then doing like marbled bodies and solid hands, or
it opens up. It's kind of nuts because I think I'd considered it early on, cutting off and like sort of remolding, and there was just something, it felt a little bit cheating. And then I don't know why, because I was probably like, no, it needs to be just like free pouring, it needs to be all done in the same. And then it just got to a point of like, look, I can't get that hard gradient. There's so many reasons, and then yeah, as soon as I like had that fresh, those green feet and stuff, and that all came kind of by accident as well. Like I had arms that they came up short with the resin, so I was like, cool, I've got some, and I'm like, shit, I'll cut them off. I'll see if they'll fit back in. There was a good chance it was all going to go to crap, but I think the only thing is it's just working at that balance between the contrast. You've got to have the you've got to work out the little kinks here. This isn't a whole new world. There's definitely opportunity and capacity to like do some crazy shit, but just remember you've got to actually get the basics of how this works, whether that's blocking the vents, whether that's using the right colored pigments on the right colored cast. So I really like that when I guess the process is kind of like fight back and they're like, dude, you need to work this out a little bit better than just fluking it the first time and thinking that you can dominate. It's like, no, you got to practice this a little bit more before being like, yo, check this fucking crazy thing out. But at the same time, it's also really hard to explain how I cast it, to be kind of like, how do I explain that it's not a double cast, they're not glued together, you know? Yeah, it was a weird thing. So, but I think people get the idea.
Who would you say is your biggest inspiration, man?
Like it's got to be, you know exactly what I'm going to say. It's got to be Healy Made. Like Healy Made is is nuts, and I don't know how much fucking mental about his style, his casts. I could not shake the image of having like, you know, the head in the torso of like a stormtrooper or a what are they, TIE fighter pilot and that kind of thing. And I've got really lucky to have the Untitled dude that it was all inspired from. So like I couldn't sort of sit here and be like, you know, Salvador Dali and his like, you know, perspective on surrealism. Really, it's like, nah, motherfuckers, like Healy Made inspires the shit out of me. Like that is exactly where Frankenstalker came from. Like there is no, and I also want to make that really clear. I'm not trying to be like, this is like a Tiddy Bean like pattern thing that, you know, you can only I put the heads. It's like, dude, this is Healy Made. It's all that.
That's lit the light bulb for you.
Yeah, and it really did. And then from there, it kind of, you know, it created its own sort of, its own thing. So, but I also think that is such a high level. I really kind of want to aim for that similar sort of style. And I love the colors and the combinations between Star Wars and G.I. Joe and all that. And they're so clean. So Healy Made's like, that's a huge inspiration, especially when it comes down to some of the colors of the styles or the actual process. But what actually like gets me through day to day, because Healy Made's not sort of pumping out figures every day or releasing new stuff every day or posting every day. But who is posting every day and releasing figures a lot of the time is the community, is people, you know, your Voids, your trash can monsters, your bootleg sewer mutants, you know, like all those guys. It's fucking nuts. Like they are what really inspires me every day. I'll occasionally see a photo from a Healy Made and be like, that's fucking cool. But that's maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. But, you know, we've got the community pumping out this shit. Like Redful Things was a huge, I guess, inspiration. I don't do those realistic figures, but the card art on Redful Things and the colors of, who were we looking at? Like Zeno, I always fuck up the name. Xenodemon
Toys.
Xenodemon Toys with those weird little, the new ones that he dropped with it. There was something with like the blue and the orange, and I was like, fuck, man, like these look like little artifacts. They look like they're made out of a kyber crystal or something. So definitely, like it's the homies, man. The homies, like, you know, just inspire me. But if we're talking about one artist, you know, I can't be like, yeah, it's not Healy. Of course it's Healy Made. Like,
and then, do you have a favorite color?
Ooh, I have a lot. Actually, fuck it. Like fluoro green. I love fluoro green.
What's the longest work session you've ever done?
Oh, that's a good one.
It's gonna be long for you, I bet.
Yeah, I reckon one of those times, one of those lives, longest work stretch. I do some pretty, I, like, don't necessarily stop that much. I stop for lunch and stop for dinner, and that's kind of all between, say, waking up at maybe 11 a.m. I guess when we're talking weekends, and then probably going to bed around and stopping around 11, 12. So probably a good 12 hours. I think you made it clear one day when I did a live, and it just kind of was going for a while, and you like actually counted up the hours, and you're like, dude, that was like 8 hours, and I'm like, damn. So,
it was like 7 in the morning, and then it was probably around 1 in the afternoon that we hopped on together. and even when I hopped on at like 7 in the morning, you were sitting there with like your drink as if you had been going all night, like painting a figure like as if you'd already been doing this for hours.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty long, but yeah, probably a good sort of 12 hours. But I dip in and out. But like I can't just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna do an hour tonight, then I'm gonna go and sit on the couch. Like it's not gonna work like that. Whether it's me on my phone looking for stuff, or editing photos to go in the store, cropping shit, like I can't turn it off until I have those days where I just almost physically just really can't anymore, and I just need to watch some movies and I kind of crash. But yeah, and it doesn't even, I don't feel bad. It's just kind of nice being like, cool, it's a day off today, and then tomorrow, and next morning I'll wake up and I'm like, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. I used to get guilt about being a bit of a day behind, but now it's just like, no, I need that rest to kind of get back into it the next day, and it feels so much better because, yeah, as you know, you just grind, and sometimes you start to lose focus of what the intention was, or what the piece is supposed to look like or sound like, or whatever it is. But yeah, but I'm definitely open to breaking my own record for the longest work session. Now that I'm going back into lockdown, let's see if we can, let's bump it up a bit.
Start with a nice 18-hour, and then we'll migrate into that 24 hours.
Yeah, I think we can go places with that.
Have you ever casted anything really weird? Have you ever made a mold of anything really weird?
Not really. I hate making molds. I have definitely improved, but it's definitely the part of the project that I put off the most. And that also goes into like not just the time of like putting it in, but like one tiny mistake that I'll notice that is in that mold, I'll notice every single figure that comes out, which to the untrained eye, you wouldn't even know it's there. You might think it's an original kind of thing, but so I think when it takes a lot for me to be like, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm making this mold. There's been a couple of like stupid heads that I've kind of made that have maybe never kind of got out there. They're actually probably coming out now as key rings. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of stupid things of just like being in the moment, thinking this is a great idea, doing this really complicated little cast of like an arm and a blaster and all this stuff crammed in, and then pulling it and it just looks like shit all the way through, and you're like, nah, that'll never see the light of day. Yeah, so it takes a long time to get me to a point where I can sit there and make a mold. So I do 2-part molds. So there's a lot of clay, there's a lot of lining up with seams, there's a lot of what do you call them, keys and that sort of thing, like all the registration points. So yeah, and also like it's just not my favorite part of the process, but I'm trying. I am getting better at it, and like I was mentioning before, the Frankenstalker mold that I did, I spent a lot of time like doing a really slick mold, and the results like speak for itself. Like I'm not seeing any deterioration, and yeah, it's just coming up good. So I don't even think it's a confidence thing. I think it's just a time thing. Like I love the quick turnaround of being able to cast shit, half an hour, and it's done. To sit there and be like, to model out a thing for ages, it's just like, nah, I want to see results. I want to see like, boom, marbling. I want to see crazy colors and shit, not fucking gray, sculpey, like trying to line it up with the seams that may or may not come out well. It's really, I just find mold making really stressful. But yeah, you sometimes you have some really, really cool results and some wins where, like the Mummy Stalker, I've only done the limbs once and they came out quite well. So that just goes down to practice and that kind of thing. But man, it takes a while to get to that point of sitting there with the clay and shit like that.
Do you personally bring a travel toy with you places?
I've started to. Yeah, I never really used to. So when I was like a young person, young boy, I'd always take toys everywhere. Going out for dinner with mum and dad, take the toys, like pockets full of toys. And then I guess once I got a little bit older, toys were a thing that it would be just for the collection in the room, not necessarily something that would go out or even come out of its packet. But since I started doing this, there's this real kind of cool thing about, going away for a couple of days out of town and taking a figurine with you and just kind of being like, Yeah, I haven't forgotten. Like, you can come as well. Like, it was really cool. It was like I did it with Frankenrot. I had a couple of days off at the start of the year and took a Frankenrot, down the beach, not actually down to the sand, but sort of with us. And yeah, there was some real comfort in having that little kind of piece of, even though I wasn't able to kind of do the casting and do anything with toys, it was really nice to kind of have a piece of that world sort of with me that wasn't just through a screen,
Right.
I couldn't just leave everything at home and then sort of like disconnect. I just needed to have that little piece of home, I guess, with me. And it was kind of funny taking photos of being like, oh, Frankenrot going on holiday or whatever the fuck I put. So yeah, and then now with my work, like, yeah, I need to have a something there when I'm in meetings or I'm on the phone. It's really, really handy just to have that little sensory thing of switching the arms around, and it's a huge asset to, like, yeah, staying grounded and staying in long work meetings that mightn't feel as exhilarating to myself as it does to others.
Fair. Do you have a favorite artist at all?
Ooh, I knew this would come up. I suck with remembering artists' names and that kind of thing.
Oh man, but an artist can be like anybody who creates something, so like it doesn't have to be like Rene Magritte or something.
I really like, I guess something I got into the past couple of years was the old EC comics, 50s, 60s, Tales of Terror, Tales from the Crypt.
Yep.
Black and white stuff. And I think I try and reflect a little bit of that in some of the headers that I do, just that really kind of basic. Even if they are colored, they're usually posterized and sort of only taken down to maybe 3 or 4 levels of color rather than that sort of stuff. So I love all those old comic book dudes, fuck Jack Kirby and some of those like crazy acid fucking trip. I can't remember the other dude. He died recently. Real heavy acid looking fucking colors, and who you write for? Probably everyone. So a lot of those comic book dudes. But there's definitely, I couldn't sit here and be like, my favorite artist is. There's so many. Philippe Flores. I've actually got a drawing. Does a lot of. So I've got a piece here. I can't even figure it out. It's like the Simpsons Cast basically, but they're all in this kind of like semi-realistic. I don't think they might be all yellow, but their faces are a bit more kind of realistic. He does like Star Wars vintage portraits as well. Just really cool, really good colors as well that feed off that vintage. Those oranges, those like Greedo greens, and really kind of, I guess, more kind of organic colors. It's fucking cool. He's got a wicked page on Insta. And also, I can't remember the name, but Joan Cornelia or something, just to make the most silly, satirical, like brutal cartoons. I've actually got to look it up because So Joan Cornella on Insta, they are just so dark, but like so funny, a really dark sense of humor. And there's just something hilarious and totally morbid about these images, and they look so friendly and colorful. Then you like read the text and you look at the whole piece and you're like, that's some dark shit. I love it. So yeah, there's a couple.
Groovy, man. And that brings us to the end of the rapid round questions.
We want to try and pay homage to the community and how much like inspiration. It's kind of really hard to just be like, hey, this guy and this guy really inspire me, and I love this. It's such a cumulative thing of sitting there and scrolling through say the Insta feed, and then hitting the stories and then finding new pages, and that's the best thing about being part of like the homies chat group, and is like you dropping in like these artists that I was like, I would never think to look up anything in this style, but that's fucking awesome. Just the exposure to different styles and different art and different toys is massively influential, and I couldn't kind of narrow that down into a certain contained kind of synopsis, but and that's the most exciting thing. It's just kind of like there's new shit coming out all the time. Like there is going to be new inspirations coming from all these different places. So yeah, I try and draw as much off the community as a whole rather than focusing too much on a particular artist. Because yeah, there's so much cool shit out there, and I loved, and you've said it to me before, I loved where Dollar Slice said there's nothing wrong with a shitload of fucking cool toys being out in the world, and I was like, yeah, because I think there is a certain competition element to it, of like trying to make toys and make this a bit of a business or a bit of a thing that could actually progress. So, but yeah, hearing it in that kind of way of like there is fucking nothing wrong with my feed being filled up with sick toys that I'm putting money aside to every week to like try and hit up or try and do drops so I can afford to buy some of these toys, because I think that's what I really try and do as much as the collection can be quite manufactured, I really want to put money back into the community and be like, cool, whether that's buying more materials to make more toys, or that's doing a drop and then putting that money straight back into, you know, getting something off fucking, you know, Trash Can or Hella or One Trick or Skull and Void. Yeah, I really try and make that clear that this stuff goes straight back into the homies and that kind of thing. I love buying fucking Super 7, but at the same time, if I'm sitting there going, oh, that Super 7 thing's kind of cool, but if I've got like, you know, something like Skull and Void doing a Doom Tracker drop, I'm like, fuck that, I'm getting the Doom. Like, I am down, because that Super 7 thing, I might see it again later. I know for sure I am never going to see that Doom Tracker in that style with that particular marble probably ever again. So it's a pretty easy decision and it feels really good supporting the homies, because they're the ones that also support me. So it's just about kind of keeping that cycle going and keeping the community going, because I think, yeah, it'd be really easy just to not do that. But yeah, I owe a lot to the homies and to the community for being really, really supportive. And also, yeah, just that constant inspiration. Even things that, yeah, things that used to inspire me that I'm not kind of too keen on now, I still really appreciate, because I wouldn't have seen something in that particular way. So yeah, I don't know if that made sense.
Oh, it made tons of sense, man. Well, I'm probably gonna end the recording portion of this, but I do really appreciate you coming and sitting down. We talked this toys, we're gonna plug the unboxing in here somewhere with all the questionings, and then that'll be a wrap, man. I really appreciate you coming out and so much information. It's gonna be a treat.
Sorry, man. I was really afraid that would happen.
No, I'm okay with that. There's a lot of good information, and that's because I think sometimes you guys forget how little you're there doing it all the time. So like the chemistry, the magic, the science, all that stuff becomes kind of like, oh, no big deal. But like we really don't understand it sometimes here. So even like, again, it was funny to me when you mentioned like your mold is pooched on the arms for the maintenance Jones, and it's like, oh, dude, you should have said something to me about. If you'd have told me like, dude, I'm so sorry that mold's gone, I've just been like, oh, okay, yeah, not a problem. But no.
And that's the thing. Like I chuck nothing away. Like I had the mold sitting there. I looked at it and went, geez, it's fucking rough, but I reckon we could get something out of this. And it was just a shitload of rubber band and a lot of little sort of scalps. And when you actually receive it, to be like, yeah, your opinion might change on the whole maintenance Jones.
No, if anything, I'll laugh my ass off about knowing that you had to basically work with like the last pull of a mold to do it, being like, no, Crumbs was a big asshole and said he wanted those yellow arms.
Nah, it's like, it's really good, because it just reminds me, like, I get very stuck using the same parts, and it's just kind of like, what the fuck am I using this stuff? Like, it doesn't take too much trimming to be like, holy shit, you know, with those arms, there could be a whole different character here. So it's really good to dig through some of that stuff. So I really like it, whether I find it or people comment on certain photos of like, damn, I actually haven't seen that mold for a while. I don't know if I've got it. I maybe go look for it and let's see if it still works. Because a lot of the molds that I've, you know, ditched are pretty pressure pots, and they had air bubble problems and that kind of thing. So there could be some really fucking good shit out there that I'm just like, ugh, not going to use this anymore, but it could be pristine. They're not, they're shit, they're dog shit, they're all fucked.
So far, all I have actually held in hand was pre-pressure pot, and those limbs are looking good, man. So it's
they're pretty. I was pretty fussy about releasing things and being good condition, like minimal bubbles as much as possible. So yeah, every piece that was released into the wild, there was probably 5 or 6 pieces that were defective and got sort of jammed to the back, probably puttied, repainted, and given away at some point.
Where would you consider a bubble in your mind? Like where are you kind of like, nah? Because if I'm be honest, for me, it's only when it's a crater that I'd be kind of like,
I think, which is super shit, and it'll probably, I don't know if you'll see it on your Frankenstalker, probably on the Deathstalker, the tops of the shoulders, the little vents that I'd usually have there, before kind of really knowing how to get rid of that. And you know, and One Trick was a big part of sort of like, you know, tap it out. Those ones might be all right. I really got to a point where I've just, if it had a bubble, like recast basically the whole figure. So it's actually funny. That was cool. But yeah, definitely the shoulder bubbles are always a big thing. Or toe bubbles on that fucking tip of the toe. There's just some spots where inside of the leg. So I'm just doing just working out. Inside the leg, that's easy, you can hide that. But when they're like on the fingers and the elbows and the shoulders and it's just like, nah, that's not going to anyone, because that's shit.
Well, I like that you've got a standard of what you send out, man, and that it seems very high.
It's extremely high. People are paying money for this, and I want them to get what is in the photos and what they would perceive as, you know, an independent toy or independent toy maker, a bootleg. There's some wiggle room there to have, you know, slight imperfections and that kind of thing. But if I can eliminate them as much as I can, I will.